Hey man, it's nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too.
How's your Thursday night going?
It's going all right. Just got back from work. A lot of crazy stuff. Worked pretty late today, so.
Yeah, I think working late's probably the worst. So I get up at 2:30. So if I work past like 3 at all, like I get like really
Oh wow,
anxious.
dang, that's insane. Yeah, no, I start my day off. I'm supposed to, like, this new job that I got. I start my days off at 6:45, but I wake up at 4:30 just to exercise. So I get early wake ups. They're not fun, but power through them and you get a good day going.
Hell yeah, dude. That sounds fun. I actually miss going to like basketball conditioning and all that early in the morning before school started. Like that was fun stuff. So, but now it's just roll out of bed and clock in.
Yeah, exactly. Like, damn it, I gotta go make money.
No, seriously. But how have you been handling this pandemic?
It's been kind of wonky. It really affected my life pretty hard because before I started this new job, I used to work in the live audiovisual industry, and it's been crazy to say the least because the whole industry has been pretty much decimated entirely. The live music, live events, stuff like that, where people gather and whatnot. It's like $1 trillion industry. It brings in lots of revenue throughout the country. And it all just one day stopped. And people I know who've been in that industry have been working for like 20 to 30 years, who've made this in their entire career, have just stopped getting money because of it. And it's been absolutely insane to see all those people I know just can't afford a living, even though they've been working hard for their entire life, you know? It's insane.
Yeah, dude, I don't know. It's sad. It's sad and it's hard, but it seems like we've adapted, to say the least.
We have adapted a bit, but for me in the industry that I work in, it seems like it's not going to come back to what it was for a long time. This virus could stick around for quite a bit, and it's too risky to be starting back up those events again, especially since I do music and I DJ and whatnot as well. And for me, that's sort of where I make my living, is in large gatherings, and it's impossible to continue that way now. You have to sort of adapt and change.
Yeah, since we're on that note, what's like, have you introduced yourself so we could put a voice to face and a face to the voice?
Okay, well, hey guys, my name is Jonny. I go by the stage name Galixi. I'm a DJ / producer out in Salt Lake City, Utah. I've been doing it for, I want to say, almost 10 years now. Maybe pretty close to 10 years coming soon here.
10 years?
Yeah, I started doing this kind of stuff when I was about 15. Before that, even music for me was a sort of a thing that I did throughout my entire life. I started my first band when I was like 11 or 12, and then just kept going with music.
What was your first instrument, or kind of first?
Guitar. I started my 10th birthday. I remember that I can track how many years I've been playing guitar because I got my first guitar on my 10th birthday, and I've been playing ever since.
What kind of guitar was it?
I got it right here, actually. It's broken. I still gotta go crazy. This is like a cheap $100 guitar from Costco. My parents bought it. It's a Fender. This is like the line that they use for beginners. It's called a Starcaster. It's like a mock of a Stratocaster. And I'd say a Stratocaster, the most famous person who ever played a Stratocaster would probably be Jimi Hendrix. So, I mean, it's cool. And the fact that like, oh, somebody will like look at it and be like, oh, holy shit, that's a Stratocaster, but no, it's a Starcaster. it's a really cheap guitar. I can't get rid of it because of my sort of, I don't know, I want to say like anxiety of losing stuff.
I actually I have a Fender as well. That was my first guitar.
Really?
Yeah, it's a green one, and we bought it from the pawn shop of all places. And right now it only has, I think, 2 strings on it. But I also have I think it's an Epiphone.
Epiphone.
I think.
I feel like that's the most common one that people would be out and buying.
It's either that or it's like a what do you want to call it? Like a rip-off version of that?
Epiphone. It's got to be Epiphone because Epiphone is a rip-off version of Gibson.
Oh, yeah, Epiphone, yeah.
So does it look like, hold on, does it look like this?
No.
Oh, it looks like a Les Paul. It looks like the guitar Slash plays.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it's an Epiphone, yeah.
Okay, yeah, cool. That one's missing its first string, so I don't play solos, so I'm not affected by that at all. But I've thought about buying new strings for that, and I also have an acoustic guitar that I play mostly.
Nice, yeah. I play acoustic mostly too because it's just you don't have to worry about plugging it in and making people pissed off.
Yeah, seriously, it's hard to play. And I'm sure you can relate. It's hard to play loud stuff in an apartment. Maybe.
Oh yeah.
You live in an apartment.
I live in a condo, so I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to mind your neighbors, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Although I kind of soundproof this room, not really, but it's not as soundproof as I want it to be.
So, was your first band? Was it like a rock band, like a
rock and roll? Yeah, we played all '80s hair metal.
Who's your favorite like '80s band then?
Motley Crue, 100%.
Motley Crue.
Motley Crue, yeah, I love Motley Crue. They're like balls to the wall crazy, just the tight pants, long hair. It's like the I don't know, the status quo for '80s hair metal.
I can vibe with that, man. That's fun.
I like them. They're great.
Do you have like a favorite band to cover?
A favorite band to cover? I'm trying to think. I would say that probably the Foo Fighters are the easiest to cover if you're going to be doing something single. But I don't know. When I was with my band, the most stuff we would play was Motley Crue. But yeah,
it's gnarly, dude.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to be in a band, right? Because I like writing like lyrics and stuff, but I don't know. I'm not too skilled in music to like fully structure that, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the cool thing about music is that you don't really have to. You don't have to be skilled in a certain field to either become big or to be good at it. Even, I mean, when I go back as an example for the Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl, he said that when he started with doing Nirvana, when he started drumming for Nirvana, he said that basically all they did was just gather their instruments in Kurt Cobain's garage, and they just played.
Jammed out.
They just jammed out, and they didn't know how to play. None of them knew how to play their instruments. They all just sucked until it became good. You know, that's the key to it.
That's kind of like a fun origin story of just sucking. Like it's like Bill and Ted almost, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing that you're supposed to do is like when you first start something out, you're never going to be good at it. You always just have to try your best until you finally get good, you know?
Yeah. So with your band, like how long were you guys around for?
I would say probably until I was around 18 or 19. And there was a whole big fallout with all of my bassists and whatnot. And we just didn't continue after that. But at that time, I was doing electronic music, and I started when I was like 15 or 16. And I just kept on going with that. I was like, I could probably just do this for a long time.
And is there like a DJ or a type of electronic music that kind of introduced you to the whole genre?
Daft Punk was the first electronic music that I ever heard. Actually, hold on. So I have two records sitting on my wall here that I framed up because these are like the standard records for me that I like base my music career off of. And this one right here, this is Daft Punk. This is their 2001 Discovery album. This is an original print, like first edition original print right there. And this is like the first electronic album that I ever heard, and where I was like, oh wow, this is insane. I didn't know you can make music out of this. And then I can show you the second one here too. Now, this one's really cool because not a lot of people remember this band, but this is Styx. This is a Paradise Theater. This is a first edition original print too. I found in a record shop. I think it was like 78 is when this album came out. But this was the first album I ever purchased with my own money when I was about 14. I purchased it on a CD. I don't have the CD anymore, but I have this album because it brings back lots of memories. So I'll set these aside for now.
That's badass. What songs are on that Daft Punk album?
Ones you might know are probably Digital Love, One More Time.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what else is on there. Face to Face is another one on there that's pretty popular, but One More Time is their most popular one off that album.
I think it's interesting that like a lot of like the electronic artists like Daft Punk, BT even, who else was it? There's another one who did the score for I Get Follows.
Mm-hmm.
They do these electronic projects, but then like they also score like these really
that was
cool
that was another one. Who did that? Deadmau5 did one for this movie called Polar.
Did he?
Sure.
Is that the one with?
It was the one with Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah.
He did it for that movie. It was a decent movie, but the score is really where it shines out, and you can tell. Another one is Junkie XL. Junkie XL did the score for Mad Max. He's fantastic. He also did the score for Batman vs Superman, if I remember correctly.
Yes, he did, and he also, from the looks of it, from a couple days ago, is redoing the Justice League score.
Yeah, because they hired Danny Elfman to like do a score for the regular one.
Yeah, dude, that whole movie is just surrounded in like oof.
It's a lot of controversy. They should have just let Zack Snyder do his thing. And from what I was reading and what I heard is that he basically shot the entire movie already, but then as soon as his daughter passed away and he had to take some time, they just took it over, which is sort of a messed up thing to do.
Yeah, I always so the thing with Zack Snyder is like I'm not the biggest fan of his movies, but he's like a very visual director that I can appreciate.
That's what I love about Zack Snyder movies is that every single frame of all those films, they always just like put context into the movie itself, and you don't have to like really pay attention as much as you just watch, you know?
Yeah, well, and I often find like his director's cuts of like all of his stuff is a lot more.
His director's cuts are always leagues better than the studio cuts. So
so you'd think the studio would be like, all right, like you always release a director's cut, like we'll let you have it just this once.
And that was the thing that I didn't understand with when they released the ultimate cut for Batman versus Superman, how it got really highly rated, and then out of nowhere they're like, okay, we're taking over Justice League. It's like, oh, what? It didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, but going back to Junkie though, Mad Max is a phenomenal soundtrack.
Oh yeah, that's a great movie all around. I love that film.
I saw that I think 4 times in IMAX when it came out.
I saw it. I wish I went and saw it in IMAX, but the theater that I went and saw it in didn't have IMAX, and I couldn't drive out to the theater with IMAX. So,
oh, man, it was worth it. That and I think that Interstellar and Arrival, those were my favorite cinematic experiences.
So you like Denis Villeneuve, right?
Dude, Denis Villeneuve, I love him. He's actually, so this might be weird. So like I have like a vision board in my office of like, you know, inspirational stuff, but there's actually a photo of him on there on the Blade Runner set. Just
wow.
Yeah, he's just chilling in the chair when like you see the camera kind of like in the frame and holding the script. And it's in the room with like the water on the ceiling and walls and stuff. Like it looks so peaceful. Badass, dude.
Yeah, I'm excited because he's doing Dune now. And I can't wait for that movie. I'm excited. That trailer looks so cool. I just like all of his projects because he's just like, I don't know, he has this way of being able to tell a story without having to rush it at all. And that's exactly what Blade Runner did. And for him to like work with another sci-fi element like that with Dune, I'm so excited.
Yeah, well, and like with Blade Runner, he kind of showed that like he could respect the original stuff.
Yeah, he respect the source material.
Yeah.
And I dig it.
Because like
it's so cool.
Going into that, people were wondering, well, how is he going to answer, you know, is Deckard a replicant or not? that's such a huge controversy with fans, and it changes depending on what cut of the original Blade Runner you watch. But the fact that he doesn't answer that, they found a very creative way to kind of go about that. I'm just like, man,
Yeah.
fucking respect.
Yeah, it was insane because I remember watching the original cut of Blade Runner and being like, this movie's boring. Why does it get so much why does it get so much praise? And then I watched the director's cut of Blade Runner and I'm like, I get it now.
Yeah, I think there's like 7 different cuts.
Yeah.
Blade Runner. It's crazy.
It's insane.
I've only seen the theatrical version and the final cut. Which
Yeah,
from my
the final
understanding,
cut's the one I watched, and that one was 10 times better than the theatrical version. So
yeah, and it's interesting though because like there's shots that are in both that are like in the same, of the what do you call them? Paper thingies, origamis, right? Is that what it's called? Yeah. But like in the first movie, there's no context to it, but then like in the final cut, there's more context to that one shot, and like it changes everything. I love it. I do. So, to answer your question, yes, I do. I do love Denis. A lot.
yeah, he's great. He's one of my favorite directors, anyways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the fact too is like Blade Runner was a box office failure.
Yeah.
And Warner Brothers is still giving him a fuck ton of money to play with Dune. Who knows if it's going to work or not? And it's only the first part of Dune. Like it's not even like the full thing.
I'm pretty sure that they paid him to shoot both movies back to back, like two films.
Do you think so?
Back to back. I think so. I think I read that somewhere, but I can't remember.
Dude,
I thought it was like straight up, just like here's all this money, record, like get 2 Dune movies out of it.
I feel like you'd have to because
I mean, like I've looked at that book and it's like it's like so thick. It's just like how can you fit that in one movie?
Yeah, I'm excited. So
yeah, I'm excited too.
Well, yeah, and then going on that, there was Greg Fraser who shot Dune, and then a few weeks before that, they released the Batman trailer, which Greg Fraser also shot. So I'm just like, dude, it's a win-win.
Yeah.
These sexy trailers back to back. I'm down. So
that's another one too. That the Batman. I'm excited for that as well because I don't think there's actually a Matt Reeves movie I dislike. So yeah. I mean, like that whole entire Planet of the Apes trilogy. It's like sort of proven to me he can sort of handle a good source material too. So I'm excited for Batman and Robert Pattinson to top it off is my like oh damn, I'm excited.
Dude, he can act.
He can definitely act. And I remember I was talking to one of my coworkers a long time ago when they announced Robert Pattinson was gonna do it, and he was like, "Why the fuck they got the guy from Twilight to be Batman?" And I'm like, "Dude, you gotta watch his other movies. Twilight is so bad, but you gotta watch his other movies."
Yeah, it's kind of like with like Adam Sandler, how he's notorious for these cheesy comedies, but he has this side of him that can most definitely act.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
So I'm excited for Robbie P. Yeah, and yeah, I did cry in Matt Reeves. Was the last Planet of the Apes actually? I cried.
Yeah, it's a great movie. That trilogy itself is pretty fantastic. He handled it really well.
I concur. But okay, going back into your beginnings. What was being in a rock band? How did you do your research to start getting into like the electronic stuff?
So I don't know. I guess I just sort of formally fell into it. The first Daft Punk song I heard was "Digital Love," and in that song, there's like a crazy cool guitar solo, and I'm like, wait, 2 guys just did this whole entire song, and it sort of like piqued my interest. Like, how can I do this? How can I make this? Because when it comes to being in a rock band, you have to, in order to write music, everybody has to be in the room, and there's no need for that when it comes to electronic. If you're thinking of something, you can just put it on your computer and just go with it, you know? And that's sort of what pushed me more towards electronic music, is that I felt like I was really the only one in the band who had the drive to want to write music. So I would just write music on my own and just keep it going from there.
What was your first software that you used?
First software I used, it was a Microsoft ripoff of GarageBand. but I can't remember. I can't remember for the life of me what it was. It was like Acoustica or something like that. Oh, Acoustica Mixcraft. That's what it was called. It was basically Rock Band or Garage Band, but for Windows, because they don't have the Garage Band for Windows.
Yeah, I messed with GarageBand when back in the day, but
Yeah, I messed with it too, and I guess I could say that that's sort of the origins of when I started doing electronic music. Because in the seventh grade, we had this class. It was like a computer science class, kind of, and they teach you everything with how to use all your Macs and whatnot. And they loaded up GarageBand, and they're like, "Let's show you how to make some music in GarageBand." I'm like, "Whoa! I could put a piano and guitar by myself. I don't even have to know how to play it." It was pretty cool.
yeah. Dude, it's freaking with GarageBand too. I don't know, because like it's the older I got, the more I kind of realized that these softwares have plugins, and
Yeah.
that's basically where a lot of the sound comes from, is these plugins, right? And knowing how to manipulate these plugins and doing it into your own style.
Yeah, no, you're correct. Yeah, there's for a lot of electronic producers, there's tons of plugins that every single person uses. For me, I get a lot of crap for it because I'm very simplistic. There's only one plugin I ever use, and everything else is stock. And the plugin I use is just for synthesizers alone. If I ever want to like add something in there that's like, I don't know, violin or like cello or something to my track that is something you can't really record since I don't have it, then I use a plugin called Omnisphere.
Yeah.
And that gets those sort of sounds in there. But everything else I use, because I use Ableton, everything else is just pretty much stock. I would sometimes go to doing like sort of mixing plugins too from Isotope. They have this thing called Ozone. Ozone 6 is what I use. But besides that, everything else is just stock. And it kind of trips people up because people are like, "Whoa, you don't have this plugin, you don't have that plugin, you don't have that plugin. Like, how does your mix sound so good? How does your track so cohesive?" And I'm just like, I don't know, I just do it, you know.
Johnny's like,
exactly, yeah. I just like dust my shoulder off. I'm like, okay, let's get to work. Let's make this sound good.
I know Isotope. I believe they just recently released something with BT. That kind of gets his glitch effect.
Probably.
Which I dig. I like BT a lot. Smart guy. But as far as Ableton goes, what's the difference between Ableton and like Studio? What's FL Studios?
FL Studios?
Yeah.
There's really not much of a difference besides user interface.
Okay.
And for me, I just learned Ableton. I didn't learn with FL Studios. When I started using Ableton, I basically just, I don't know, it was like a couple months before I got into a studio internship, and I just started using Ableton, and then I got into the internship, and then I just kept on using Ableton because that's what they taught me on. A lot of producers, they just go with what they go with, and most of the time it usually just comes down to user interface. It's just what people like and prefer, because there isn't really much of a difference between FL Studios and Ableton at all, besides, I don't know, what you like about it.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like with like editing programs or
exactly. It's like the
software.
difference between Final Cut Pro and like Sony Vegas or something like that. You know,
yeah,
people just do what they're comfortable with.
Yeah, I know. So in school, I never took the class, but they had an editing class where they taught Final Cut specifically. And I think that kind of steered me away because I've always known Adobe.
Yeah.
So, no, I understand that. That makes sense, sir.
Yeah. It was the same thing because, what was it called? Oh yeah, there's a program that just about every single recording studio uses. It's called Pro Tools.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, every studio uses Pro Tools, and as soon as I jumped in to that studio internship, they taught me Pro Tools, and I'm like, I hate this. This is bullshit. And then I just switched to Ableton again. I was like, why do I have to record in Pro Tools when I can just record in Ableton? Like, what am I doing here?
Is there a program that's designed specifically for mastering, or do they all kind of handle mastering equally?
It's just most people I know who master professionally use Pro Tools, but when I master in Ableton, and a lot of people I know master in Ableton too. It just depends on your preference too. There's no specific software for mastering things.
Okay, because I just for coming from a film background, I kind of picture mastering kind of like the color correction of a project where you're fine tuning.
Yeah, it's basically like final touches. Exactly. Yeah, it's just making everything sound correctly and making sure you can hear bits and pieces of sounds. It's just like I guess if you want to go back to film, because I know that I did work for a short film during that internship, mastering their audio track and whatnot, and we did all that in Pro Tools, and that's one advantage that Pro Tools has over all the rest of those programs, is that you can drag and drop a video file in there, so you can fine tune things, and then you can export the video file and send it over to get the final cut on it. So yeah, Pro Tools is definitely like the one that everybody uses, especially when you're doing mixing for movies. And I remember watching the Lord of the Rings behind the scenes, and they were using like Pro Tools version 2 or something like that, like back in the 90s. It was like the first ever time I've ever seen Pro Tools used behind the scenes, and I was like, okay, wow, I guess that has use.
Dude, can you imagine how long it would take to render all those fight sequences using those computers?
Goodness, man, it was so insane. And like, if you go back and like watch those films too, it's just like, how do they get the CGI so good? It still holds up, and it's so strange to me how like looking back at those movies, it's just like, it's like mind blowing. Like, they had this technology like 20 years ago. How come I didn't have this technology 20 years ago?
Yeah. How do you feel about saying that? Like 20 years ago, they started
so
filming I think in 99 is when they started filming.
Because Fellowship of the Ring came out in 99, didn't it? And then
came out in 01.
In 01?
Yeah.
And then Two Towers was 2002, and 2003 was Return of the King. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's so insane, man. So crazy.
Like, let that sink in, dude.
Yeah. But that just speaks to the volumes of the director, because when you have a good film, it's always a mix of practical effects versus video effects, and it's sort of blending the two together that makes the actual film like believable. Like, if you were to go like watch Transformers, none of that shit's believable, because you can see specifically it's all CGI. You know it's all CGI. But if you were to go back and watch Lord of the Rings, you're like, is this CGI or is this like real? You know, and that's one of the things that I know that Guillermo del Toro was a costume designer and set designer for those films, and him working in tandem with Peter Jackson to create all of that really, really helped out, because that's something, like I said, something you need to work with in order to make a film believable.
Yeah, I watched it was a YouTube video of this guy talking about the visual effects of that time period, and he tore apart some of these scenes where they used miniatures on set, and it goes back to what you were saying, how the miniatures were practical and they could make it look bigger than it actually was, and then they'd green or blue screen this other stuff, but it would be so far in the depth that they wouldn't have to worry about detail.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the reason that you had to do it. Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. Is like it's a really smart application of using CGI when you like. That's another thing that I love. Like, Christopher Nolan does that a lot. He's like, if I don't have to use CGI, I won't use CGI, because it breaks immersion if you can tell that's made by a computer.
Yeah. But speaking of Nolan, did you see Tenet yet?
Yeah, I did.
What'd you think?
Shit sucked, bro. I'm fucking with you. It was pretty good. I liked it. I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. The action sequences were awesome, but as someone who comes with a sound background, I would say that movie should get a raspberry for the worst mixing I've ever heard in my life. It was some of the most abysmal mixing. It was so jarring to me how they could possibly like pass that off and be like, oh, this is just stylistic choice. And like, well, sometimes stylistic choice sucks. You just gotta roll with the changes, you know? And I don't know. Nolan, I know that he's very untouched with that. He's like, I want it to be that way. And I just wish somebody would like tell him no, it shouldn't be that way.
You want it that way though?
Yeah, exactly. I just like, for me, I had such a hard time understanding that film because the spoken dialogue in that movie was so muddied.
Yeah.
And they really should have, what they should have done is they should have cut out low frequencies so you didn't have to hear like the boominess of someone's voice. And that's typically what you do when you do audio for a film. You cut out low frequencies so you don't have to, you can only hear the frequencies that you need to understand the dialogue that's being spoken. And especially when it comes to other things around you. I know he says he does that mixing practicality to make things more realistic, but we know this is a movie. We know this is fake. It's, you know, like the whole entire premise of the film is science fiction, you know, like we know this is make believe. It's not going to be realistic, you know, but you want to be able to, especially with Nolan, the thing I love about Nolan is that his films have a lot of exposition, but that's also the thing that really sucks about Nolan, because you can't understand a thing in that movie without having to like specifically listen to the dialogue. And yeah. I'm going to have to give it another rewatch with subtitles on so I can understand it a bit more, but I thought it was good. It was beautifully shot. All the action sequences were incredible. It makes me wonder, like, how the hell did they do that? It was really good. It was a good film.
Yeah. The third act was mind-boggling.
Yeah, it was the third act, or right when it started to ramp up to toward the end there, like the last 30 minutes or so. I was like, goodness gracious, like this is insane. How did he do all this?
Yeah,
it was
because
really
like
cool.
I was following the story, like, oh, I get it, right? Like, I don't get why people are having issues with this. And then I remember thinking halfway through the third act, I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. Like, yeah, I remember about the point where they, it was like about the point where they took the, I don't know, spoilers for anybody who's gonna watch Tenet. Just a heads up, we're gonna get into some spoiler territory. But when they took that guy's wife through the back through the time machine and started going backwards, I was like, wait, what? I was like, this isn't how time works, right? Like I thought we established how time works in the first half of the movie. You can't just go back and then just like, they didn't see themselves in the past already. I just didn't understand. I was like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, dude. Or like when he's facing the guy on the other side of that mirror and he's talking backwards, I would assume, but then it would come through.
Yeah. It was
high concept for sure.
Yeah, very, very high concept. And exactly why I need to watch it with subtitles so I can try and understand what the hell is going on in the last half of that movie.
Yeah. I want to touch on something you said, though. You were talking about mixing for film. I didn't know that you try to get rid of the low frequencies.
Yeah, you absolutely have to try to get rid of the low frequencies because there's a specific. It's the same thing when you're listening to a song.
Yeah.
There are higher frequencies. Everybody's human vocal range is in a certain amount of frequencies. That's where their peaks are. If you really like get technical in it, the human frequencies or like the human voice in those frequencies could just span all the way out. But if it's the difference between if I were to just cover my mouth like this, all you hear is the low end stuff, right? But if I were to bring it back up, then you can hear the clear stuff, right?
Right. So
the reason that is because when a human speaks, those low frequencies, they travel a lot slower and it becomes more boomy. That's the reason when you hear somebody on the other side of the wall, it sounds really muffled, right? But when you're cutting out those high frequencies, you can't understand anything, you know? The thing is that those low frequencies will always, always overpower the high frequencies. So you always want to make sure to cut out the low frequencies so you can hear the stuff in the diction, you know? Because if I go, that's like a high frequency thing. And then you can't hear that on the other side of the wall because it can't travel through the wall. But if I'm just regularly talking, you would just hear the low end stuff. And it gets all to this like frequency technical stuff. But yeah, you really want to cut out low frequencies, and that's something that Nolan doesn't do in his films. And he really classes frequencies a lot with other frequencies. When you're mixing and mastering a track, you don't want to make sure that frequencies don't clash, or else you're not going to hear certain things that you want to hear. So you want to be able to just like adjust for that, you know. One thing I always do, especially in all my mixes, to always take like an 8-band EQ and then look where the peaks are in the frequencies, and then cut out everything else that's not in those frequencies. Because if you leave all that stuff in, it just muddies and clashes with everything else that's in the background.
So you kind of, I guess, you kind of learn how to read the graphs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's like we call it a sound spectrum.
Okay.
It's like a spectrometer. If you just like were to take a spectrometer and throw any sound into it, you'll always be able to see where the peak is. Especially when it comes down, you'll be able to see that it stops at a certain high point for the decibel range, and then that's always the sound that you want to bring out the most, and you want to make sure that no other sounds are cutting into that space, so you EQ out of it. So like if I were to have something in like 1,000 hertz range, that's like where our peak is, and we want to hear that, then any other sound like that I don't want to outpower that, I take an EQ and I put it down too, just to make sure that that thing peaks up.
Man, that's nerdy. I love that.
Yeah, it's a lot of technical stuff. It's just stuff that you learn when you as you go through it also.
Yeah, because when I was doing my short film, I did the editing and I did the audio work. Aside from the music, that was my dad. But with the dialogue, there's scenes where we were clashing with a freeway.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, I wish I would have gone back to like, do voiceovers or whatever have you. But
that's the one thing I didn't know that was really a thing until I actually started doing that short film stuff, was that people actually come in and do voiceovers into studios. And I was like, that's actually smart, because you can't just get that sound when you're recording out on a freeway, you got to make sure that it's all clear so people come in and do their voice recording, so you can put that over as a layer over the master track, and then you just put the FX in the background.
Yeah, and you try to make it kind of blend in, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I have yet to do that, but I do plan on that. It's good to know with the frequency stuff, though, and I assume that's the same thing with vocals, correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
Because vocals are like the most important part of any track, or any, like, even if you're doing film mixing, vocals are like the most important part, because that's how you understand what you're seeing in the film. Either that, I mean, if it's a silent film, then you show visually, but I mean, the dialogue is probably one of the most important parts of a film, and that's what I really disliked about Tenet, was that you couldn't hear dialogue. So you really need to be able to really bring out vocals when it comes to that.
Fair. I love that. That's good to know. It's common sense to know that, but like also to know the process, it's kind of badass. Okay, going back to being 15 and learning how to DJ. When did you start releasing songs to the public?
The first track I ever released, I was, I think, 15, and I made it on Acoustic and Mixcraft, and that was the first track I put out there to the public, and I threw it on YouTube. It's probably still out there somewhere today, but I've never been able to find it. If anybody can find it, go ahead. But I can't remember what it was called. I know that I went by the name Techno Snake, and I didn't actually release a song after that until I was about, I want to say, 18, when I actually started releasing songs for people to hear out.
Do you have like albums out now, or is it still just singles?
It's all just singles. I want to reserve albums for the right label, and like the right I don't know how to say it, like advertisement process. I don't know. I just want to be able to get people to hear that, and I want to be able to have a label that understands what I'm trying to make, and like vibes with the vision I'm trying to have. So far, I've been sending stuff out to labels, and none of them have really gotten back to me. And I know that it's not because the stuff is bad per se. I know that it would do decently if I were to release it, but I know that they reject it usually because it's so different. It's it's usually like just strange, and nobody really knows if it'll like have a place out there. And that's what I'm really trying to find out when it comes to this kind of thing.
How would you describe your music then?
It's the stuff that I've been making lately is it's a clash of rock and electronic, and it's something that a lot of people, when they think of like rock and electronic, they think of like stuff like Killers or like Neon Trees, and it's not like this alternative like synthesizer over guitar and alternative rock vocals. It's really more of a harsh, hard, like 1980s metal type vibe with electronic music, but not in like the hardcore electronic music of like dubstep or rhythm and really like crazy like wubby sounds and stuff like that. It's hard to explain how it sounds, because I think it's unique. I mean, there are artists that I pulled off of when it comes to making that sound, but yeah, it's hard to kind of explain. But I would say it's more like a classic rock vibe with electronic music.
That'd be an interesting mix.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Is like when I think about it, my influences have all been like all 1980s, 1970s hard rock bands and electronic music, and trying to mix those two is like it's different, and I know it's strange.
Yeah, there's a band I listen to. They're called 100th. I don't know if you've heard of them.
No.
They were a hardcore band at first, but now they are very much synth pop, and they experiment a lot, which I appreciate. I think if a band sticks to one thing, like our music group sticks to like one specific sound, they're never going to kind of grow necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. You got to move on. It's like the same thing I know with like a Panic at the Disco.
Yeah.
For me, like they have like that whole emo phase back in the early 2000s, and then now it's like a really poppy jam kind of. And I think that you have to grow as you go further, because people are just going to listen to your new albums you put out and be like, oh, I've heard this before, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's sort of like the pitfall that AC/DC falls into. It's like, it's all good, but it's the same song, you know?
It's great road trip music.
Exactly. Yeah.
Turn that bitch on and windows down, dude. Like, you know, you're in for a good road trip.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So when, like, let's ask you like a harder question, perhaps. Yeah. It might sound loaded, but I don't think it's loaded. Being an artist, I know for a fact you have those moments where you're doing something and then like the idea will hit you, right? How does the idea come to you? Like, do you hear it first, or do you see visuals first? Like, how exactly do you kind of go through your brain waves to get the idea?
I would say that this is going to sound ridiculous, but I would say that it's kind of cheating, and that I basically listen to other music and be like, that's a cool idea. And it'll come to me when I'm like on the treadmill and like have my headphones on and just like listen to a track or something. And then I'll just be like, oh, that's cool. Or if I'm like at work and then I have my headphones in and I just like hear something, I'm like, oh, I can do that. That sounds awesome. It's ideas really come more or less from inspiration, especially when I listen to music. And it feels like cheating because it's sort of just like, oh, I'm just ripping off this guy. But I feel like it's more just like taking ideas of things that I like, you know?
Yeah, I don't think that's cheating at all. Especially with, like, let's say that I'm in the shower, right? Weird thought. Don't think that. But if I was watching a cool movie before that, like let's say the Dune trailer, right? Seeing some of those cool ass shots, I would try to perhaps incorporate some of that into like a script I'm writing, you know, to pull off this cool visual. Like, it's just artists influence other artists, dude. That's what makes us all connected.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I don't think that's cheating at all. So when you're doing your music though, when you're at your workstation putting it together, do you see like a story kind of formulating in your mind, or are you kind of thinking analytically about it with like the EQs and all that stuff?
It depends on the idea I'm having, because mostly I just sort of sit down and write. and it just goes in the direction that I enjoy. Unless I come to my station with an idea specifically, then I try to formulate around that idea. Like, let's say I have a subject that I want to talk about, or I want to sing about in a song. Try and formulate the sound to the sort of idea of that track or those lyrics or however I'm writing it.
So do you sing too then?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I have I want to say three songs out that I have vocals in.
What are they called?
Okay, so the first the first one is called Miracles. That's like the first track I actually ever put out with my vocals inside of it. And then I did a rehash of that because I disliked that version. So I was just like, okay, I'm just going to throw a reprise on it, the word reprise at the end, and just be like, okay, I'm doing it. And so I re-recorded that. And then the last track I put out, which is called Ghost, and that one came out in May, this last May. I think I might have one more on there, but I can't remember. No, I don't. No, that's it. That's it.
Are you open to like collaborating with other vocalists? Kind of like trance music does, you know?
I would, but in order for me to do that, like a collaboration with another vocalist, I'd have to, I feel like, personally know the person, because when I write my music, not to sound like overzealous or like, I don't know how to word it, like prideful when it comes to the music. When I write a song, I usually have it with a specific intention in mind, and I want to make sure that somebody or whoever that I'm doing the vocals with, they have to like share that same vision when it comes to that. I've tried doing collaborations with vocalists before, and for some reason, just to me and to my ear, I'm like, okay, I know this sounds good, but it just doesn't sound like the feeling I want somebody to be singing it with. And the only person who knows that feeling is the person who wrote it. That's me. You know?
Yeah. No, I could see that. You kind of said something though, where you said creating it with intent, writing it with intent. Mm-hmm. That's such a hard thing for artists to do. I feel like sometimes, because they kind of get caught up in this ego game, you know, like this they want to be the best that no one ever was, kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
But I think creating the intent's where like the passion really lies. And so the more you hone in on that, like, I don't think anything could go wrong. Mm-hmm. Creating with intent, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. You just gotta, that's what I feel like my most successful songs have been. Just songs that I sit down and write, and I'm just like, okay, I know what I'm doing here, or like, I know how I want this to be, or I know the direction this is going in, and then it flows, and then somehow just pops out the other end just better.
Yeah. Do you do music videos for your songs then?
There's one specific song that I want to do a music video for that's not out yet, and I want to release it when I have the ability to do a music video for it. The closest thing that I do is just doing like pre-release like hype videos, kind of. I would just pull up a bunch of clips in Sony Vegas and splice them together and just say, oh, this new track's coming out this time and whatnot. But that's about the extent of all I do video wise with my music. I'd love to do more visual stuff, but it comes down to me feeling like I need to be able to have the income and the money to pay for that, because I don't want to just be I don't want to be telling somebody else like, here, can you do this for a music video, without having to like pay them the proper due, you know, like your art's valuable, your time is valuable, you know, and which is why I guess every single time that I've done all of my releases, I've always done the artwork and like the video and everything like that. I don't think I've ever actually paid anybody to do any of that. But when I ever have the ability to, I'd actually pay somebody to do it.
Have you played live then?
Oh yeah, plenty of times. Yeah. It was all, well, I wouldn't say I sang live plenty of times. I only sang live once. Um, with my band, I did a couple times live, but all DJ stuff is just show up and plug in your USB and people jam out to your tunes and whatnot. But I do that. I did that a lot before the whole coronavirus thing. I do maybe at least one show every month or every 2 months or something like that. Try to keep the hype going in the state, but ever since then, it's sort of just been dying downhill. Which kind of sucks because like when the whole coronavirus thing started to like ramp up, I started to get into doing more live shows, and I had my first headlining gig in like April. And then out of nowhere, coronavirus shows up, and like 2 weeks later, headlining gig's canceled. I'm like, great, that's awesome. This was like supposed to be the premiere of like I bring my keyboard, my guitar, and sing and everything, and it would have been awesome. But yeah, I wish I could have done that. There is some. I know that the biggest event company here in the state, asked me to do a live stream, and that's what I did. Is I did that, and just like this is sort of what I do now.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of bands have gone live streaming.
Yeah, but I'll say that our industry is still doomed because every single band has been doing live streaming. Because as cool as the concept is of live streaming, it's a completely different monster from when you actually go out to a concert and watch somebody. Because when you go to live stream, it's just anybody can do this. Anybody can do this. But who can say, oh, I went out on Saturday night to go watch this band, and then there was like their last tour or something like that, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere they just started live streaming, and it's like, oh well, I watched this band live stream, like I didn't actually get to see that person in person. That's why I think the industry is more or less doomed, and we can't really come back from any of this.
Because I know in Salt Lake there were some venues shut down.
Yeah.
Were some of those venues like venues that you played at often?
Not often. The venues that did shut down were more historic venues that were that have been around for a long time, have been hanging by a thread, really. The one that comes to mind is Club Sound or In the Venue.
Yep.
That one was one of the most, like, I remember going there when I was around, I want to say 17, for one of my first ever like concerts. And it was crazy because it was just like such a small area, and it was like had like this really intimate vibe to it. And after coronavirus hit, it sort of lost all its revenue. It didn't do shows there anymore. And the only shows that it was doing for like the last 1 or 2 years was it's these sort of smaller shows that like smaller event companies would throw, or it would be like very non-mainstream artists. It would be like pop punk artists would come through and they roll, oh, we got a show in the venue. And that they just closed down because they can't really keep up with it, And there was another one called Bricks. It's that one's like sort of like historic warehouse type of venue that got shut down too. And I'm trying to think of any other ones, but I know that those ones have been losing business for a while because they were sort of in a badder part of town. Because that was just to say the least, it was in a pretty bad part of town because I know that In the Venue / Club Sound was pretty much just right across the street from the homeless shelter, and we had a pretty bad homeless problem in Salt Lake. And not to be like insensitive or anything, but the most of the people who were at the homeless shelter were usually like either like addicted to drugs or there because they had mental health issues, and it just ended up getting really, really bad downtown. And anytime you go to like In the Venue, you wouldn't not hear about somebody getting their car broken into or something like that. And that was just going downhill for a while. So it was just sort of inevitable.
The last time I was at that venue, I think I was seeing, I hate to say it, I think I was seeing like Attila, who's like a really shitty hardcore band. Hardcore. But that was 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
They've been really not been pulling that big of acts lately. I remember the biggest act that I saw there was Dylan Francis back in want to say 2016, my first electronic show I actually ever went to. But it was huge, and everybody there was awesome, and everybody had a good time. There was no problems at all. Just slowly but surely, just steadily over time, it just started declining.
Yeah. Have you played at Kilby Court?
I haven't played at Kilby Court, but I've been to Kilby Court plenty of times. The reason I haven't played there is because when you're a DJ, you can't really. Kilby Court has like they have
shitty acoustic.
No, it's not. They're not shitty acoustics. I would say that they have like this rule set that they go by saying if you come play at our venue, you have to play only original songs. And when you're a DJ, it's sort of hard to do that. I probably would have gone to play there now with my new live set and whatnot, because that's all I do is play original songs now. But yeah, when you're a DJ, DJs can't really go play out at Kilby Court just because of that.
So, okay, now that brings up an interesting question then. So when you get these songs from other artists that you're kind of like remixing or, including bits and parts of, do you have to get the copyright for those? Like the permission to use those?
If you're going to release it and make money off of it, yes.
Okay.
Technically, it's still
always good to do.
Yeah, it is always good to do. But the thing is that if an artist puts like the stems to the track out there, then it's totally 100% legal. And actually, when you remix a song, as far as DMCA and copyright law goes, it's 100% legal. But the record companies don't like that. And the record companies, they have hold over all the streaming companies. So if they say, oh, this song contains a clip of recording or of somebody else's song, they can say, hey, do that, or we're going to pull all of our music off your site. Like, take it off, or we're going to pull all your music off our site. And so streaming companies basically have to say, okay, we can't do that. And what SoundCloud and Spotify and Apple have been trying to do lately, they've been trying to work with record labels and saying that any song that comes through that's a remix or like a cover or anything, you get a share of the revenue, and then it can be monetized, and the artists who remix it can get a share of the revenue too. But if it's an unofficial remix, then pretty much just any record label, any person who owns a song can say, okay, I don't like that, let me take it out.
So you were saying that you would Google stems?
Yeah, so stems are basically like the bills of a track. It's like it would come to you in a folder, and it's just like all these audio files, or it could be like MIDI files, and it would just say, oh, these are the vocals, and then these are the synths, this is the bass, and this is the drums, this is the kick, or something like that, and then you would throw it out onto your like your Ableton or Fruity Loops or whatever, and then it would just be on the tracks, and then you play it back and forth, and then you can see, or you can hear the full length of the song, but you can cut parts out. So it's basically like taking all the parts of the song and then just putting it on tracks.
See, I wasn't aware that they do that. I always thought people would just find the whole song itself and then go into like Adobe Audition and
so that's,
try to like reverse engineer it essentially.
Yeah, so that's the difference between there are different sort of versions of a remix, and first is just a regular remix, and that's somebody who is in like an official remix of a track and actually grab the stems of a track and would like actually remove parts or readjust parts and actually remix it. That's why they call it a remix. Is you actually take the full stems of the mix and you rearrange it to how you want it to sound. That's why they call it a remix. And then there's a bootleg, which is just taking the song and then just sort of trying to cut out the frequencies, the parts you don't like, and then just adding to it. And that's like an unofficial remix, or they call it a bootleg because it's pirates, it's like piracy. It's illegal. It's not really legal. And then you have a VIP, which is a variation in production. And that's just taking a song you've already made and then just producing it differently.
Okay. It's like a rendition of it, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. Okay. That's fun. I didn't know artists actually give stems away like that. So
yeah, some artists do it and some artists don't. So if you ever hear like some of unofficial remixes, then they have like the actual parts of the song in there.
Okay, can they sell the stems?
I guess they could if they wanted to. I've never seen an artist actually do it before.
Because like I know a lot of photographers will, and videographers for that matter, they'll sell like their LUTs or their photo export settings or whatever. But they charge like $30 for like a whole pack that has like 10 different settings on it. So
I guess you could do that with your stems. But I know that artists, what they do is they make sample packs. Uh-huh. That's what a lot of electronic music is really derived from, is samples.
Yeah,
sampling music and sampling sounds and whatnot. So artists would actually make sample packs and make sounds to sell out to people. And the biggest distributor for that is a program called Splice, and they partner with artists to say, hey, I want to take your sound, this sound, this sound, this sound, put it in a pack, and then sell it to other artists.
That's fascinating. Dude, this is all new to me.
Yeah, there's a really whole just like there's a really long list of underground things that you don't see on the surface when it comes to a lot of electronic music, or it comes to like any music in general, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So are these samples, are they like already mastered and stuff, or is that still up to the...
Yeah, no, it's already mastered. And,
okay.
Well, because samples are they're more like a raw file. It's more like a piece that you put inside your mix or inside your song, and then you master it afterwards to make things fine-tuned and sounded. It's basically like taking let's say you were to edit a bunch of clips together into one long montage, or like one long full clip or one long scene. What you would do is you just take those samples and everything like that, but in order to fit it, what you would do is you would mix and master. As where in editing, that would be all like the color correction, the sharpness. You want to make everything is in the right color palette. That's basically the equivalent of mixing and mastering. You want to make sure it all sounds correct together.
So badass. I love it, dude. That's fun. I want to talk about your name real quick. So, not your name, Jonny. Hi. Your DJ name. Galixi. You spell it in a very cool way.
IXI. Yeah.
Yeah, that sticks out. You sent me those before we started recording. I'm like, damn, Mike, that's a badass name.
Yeah, so that name, it originally came from a long time ago. I actually used to go by the name Technosnake.
Okay, yeah.
And after a while, I realized it's kind of a mouthful. As much as I really like and sort of, I don't know, have like a bond with that name.
Yeah.
I just decided to let it go after a while, because I was like, this isn't vibe. This isn't like a good marketing sort of thing. And I was searching for a while for a new name. And at this time, I was dating this girl who lived down in Cedar City, and I lived in Tooele County. It's like a 4-hour drive. I just barely bought a new car, and with that new car came a subscription to Sirius XM. It was like a 6-month trial or something like that. And I was driving down, and I was listening on the radio to Sirius XM, and they had like an electronic channel. It was the only electronic channel they had on Sirius. And I was listening to the song, and I was like, this song's so badass. I love this song. And I looked, and the thing with my car was that the little panel where it shows you the names, it doesn't scroll, and it cuts off at the end. And so it was like a song that said like the artist name, the song title, and it was a remix, and it had in parentheses GALI. And I was like, that's cool. It's a cool song. I want to look it up so I can find it. So I went on SoundCloud, and I was like, maybe it's like, I don't know, Galixi or something like that. And so I typed it, and nothing showed up. And I was like, that's actually a cool name. I want to use that. And I went back and forth between just switching that first I out with an A and just making it Galixi, like a regular one, or just going the regular spelling of Galaxy. But what it ultimately came down to is that if I spelled Galaxy with just an A instead of that I there, Samsung Galaxy would show up. And I was like, God damn it. So I would just go into Google and just type in Galaxy with the 2 I's, and then nothing really showed up. It was just like Galaxy. I was like, okay, I guess that's more marketable, and I can try and do that now. And so I've been using that name ever since.
It sticks out. Like, if you know nothing about your music, I listened to the one that was released in May. I was listening to like the first 2 minutes of that before we jumped on here. But I was like, dude, that's like, I wonder what the music's going to sound like. Is it going to sound like galactic, like universal? And yeah, I think your music sticks out from what I heard. Just so you know, I'm digging it. So
thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, that track I released a couple months ago, it was actually supposed to be like the starter of a concept for an EP that I was working on for like, honestly, like the last 2 or 3 years. I call it like the Voyager EP, because it's like it's sort of like the sound, like the culmination of sounds that I wanted it to be.
Yeah,
like that I've always wanted to make, and so I tried to try and make that, and I named it Voyager after the song Voyager in the Daft Punk album. And I've just been trying to like put that whole thing together for like the last 2 years, and I feel like it's finally come to fruition where I make a sound, and I have a sound that I know that I always wanted to create.
So do you build, like when you're releasing the music, do you kind of sit on it for a while before deciding when to release it, or do you just kind of release it as you're done with it?
It depends on the track, really. If it's a remix, I'll always, well, with any track, I always postmark a date 2 weeks out.
Okay.
So I can have proper advertisement and proper exposure to get people to listen to the song, get people excited for the song. And so I always postmark that date 2 weeks out beforehand. If it's a remix, then I just go straight away. I just go, okay, you know what? I got this remix. I'm going to put it out in 2 weeks. Go listen to it. If it's an original track, I always try to wait like 4 or 5 weeks so I can get the cover art done in those 4 or 5 weeks. I can also send the music out to distributors, because it takes 2 weeks in order for the distributor to put their music on your site, or your music on their site. And then I always try to get like a marketing campaign ready to go to get people hyped up for a track too. So it just depends on whether it's a remix or an original, or how long I sit on it. But I guess it also depends on, always, every single time before I say, okay, I'm going to release this track, I listen back to it again, just to make sure that it's the version I want to release. Because there have been a couple of times where I put a track out and I'm like, damn, I could have done something different with that. Or like, damn, this sucks. And I'm like, okay, well, I gotta make sure to like let it sit for a minute before I come back to it, and then just re-listen to it with fresh ears, so I can try and get a vibe of how good it actually is.
Don't you love that though? Like when you do release stuff, and then be it like a year later or 2 years later, you're like, oh, I should.
Like, I could have made it better.
Actually, that happened tonight after I was making dinner. I went down to my apartment lobby area to get my mail, but I was walking out the door, and in my short film, there's a sequence between these two characters talking, and for whatever reason, it played out differently in my mind than what the final product is. And then I realized that should have been the edit. Like it was just like switching like 2 shots around.
And it's like, no, like it's already out there.
2 years late.
It's like, I can't do it now.
No, damn. No. So I think it's fun. I think creating shit's fun, and we're just creating cool shit.
Creating stuff is always awesome. I love just making things. And it doesn't even have to be music. It's just nice to create something.
Yeah. Now that we're stuck in quarantine, have you been creating more stuff, or have you just been taking it easy and trying to keep afloat? Or
I've been taking it easy, because the job that I had before the whole quarantine thing started really had me in like a set schedule and being busy all the time. And after that all ended, I was just like, well, what do I do now? You know? And it was sort of just like, I couldn't really find any real inspiration to actually like try and continue to do art in general. It was a really dark spot between like, I want to say March to around May-ish, where I was just like, I don't really have any motivation to do anything. Might as well just sit at home and play video games or something. And then that's all I did for basically 2 months.
How did you kind of overcome that?
It was just really motivation. I guess the first time that I actually felt like the real motivation to do anything was back in like the beginning of May. Joyride, it's one of my favorite artists of all time. he came out with an album. He just like dropped it at the end of April, and I was like, this is really good. What have I been doing these last 2 months? And then I really started to actually try to push myself to create new music. And I guess I would say that live streaming, having people ask me to stream my music too, really helped motivate me, because I always wanted to, every single time I do a show, I always want to bring something new that people haven't heard before, like if you're watching this Galixi show, this is something that you haven't heard before already. So I want to make sure that you hear something new. And I guess those are probably the busiest times that I actually get stuff done with music, is when I have a set date and I actually have motivation. I'm just like, I want people to listen to this,
Yeah. Because I know like this, even now I'm still struggling with like that rut. Being in this pandemic sucks ass.
It does.
There's no way around it. And it sucks more is that, like, especially film stuff. I have a lot of friends who are out there still filming, and majority of them are wearing masks, thankfully. But it's that mentality of like being more worried about your own safety, where it's just like, it doesn't make it fun to go out there anymore.
It definitely doesn't. Yeah.
Just like shit. Like what do I do? But it's been a very reflective time for me,
Yeah,
at least.
Definitely for me too. Yeah. You get a lot of time to think.
A lot of time. And I'm excited to see what kind of comes from this place and time, especially with people having so much free time.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's been a lot of, especially in film, there's been a lot of people who've been able to get creative with it. I know there've been like a couple films that have been filmed this entire time during quarantine, and I'm like, it's going to be crazy, because in like the next year or so, there's going to be a couple movies out there that have been just like 3 or 4 people in one room at a time.
Yeah. And
it'll be interesting to see what comes of it.
Yeah, dude, I'm excited for that. But I'm also excited for like, you could probably relate to this, is there's a lot of musicians going more independent now.
Yeah.
And staying on big labels. And a lot of them are actually a lot better off on their own labels.
Yeah.
Which I'm excited to see what they actually come up with during this time too, because...
Yeah, and a lot of that... Oh, go ahead. Finish.
No.
Okay. Okay. All right, yeah, so a lot of that is mostly because I know that when record labels, when they sign a musician and when they sign somebody to say, hey, we want this album out, but it has to be produced by this specific person.
Okay.
And so what they do is, like, when the talent scout goes out and scouts and an artist signs, it's basically like signing your soul off to the devil. It's like artists don't really get creative rights when it comes to putting stuff out on labels. It's like when you sign a directorial deal with a studio or something like that, they basically say, okay, we get say over the final cut. The producer always comes in, he's like, I get say over the final cut.
Or Zack Snyder.
Exactly. And that's the same thing with labels, is that they come in, they'll come in with a producer and say, how can we make this sell like maximum album sales? And the producer will always adjust it to how the studio gets like this market research and stuff like that. And that's what I appreciate about smaller labels doing, is they find a better sound, or they find people with the sound that they like, and they say, we like that sound, we want you to make more of that sound. And that's what I feel like artists are gravitating more towards now, because when you sign with a label and you get that distribution with that label, the label takes like 99% of the income.
Yeah.
And artists have no choice but to get off labels, because in this pandemic, artists beforehand only made music off of touring. That's literally the only income that they ever had, was touring and playing shows and whatnot. And labels took all the money, took all that they possibly could, and artists don't see a dime. So everybody has to adapt to that. So that's why all the artists are getting off labels and trying to start their own thing, which I think is great, because it gives artists more creative freedom and gives a real change in sound.
How do you feel about like live drive-in shows?
No idea. That's coming as a both as someone who's been on the stage and someone who's also been working behind the scenes. Because the job that I had before the pandemic was working behind the scenes doing this whole live audio visual kind of thing. And I think it's incredibly stupid to be doing, especially at a time like this. There's just no way you can monitor so many people, and it blows my mind how these people can get into thinking just like, okay, I need to sacrifice all these people's lives for my $500 I'm going to make tonight. And to me, it's just, you're only pushing this thing back further. And I don't know, especially in America, it just really frustrates me how dumb we've gotten when it comes to this kind of thing. Because we just been pushing it back further and further and further and further because we just don't want to listen. We don't want to stay at home and just like literally all we had to do for like 2 straight weeks was stay at home, and nobody wanted to stay home. Everybody just decided to go out. Oh, I'm going to go get married. I'm going to go invite a bunch of people over to my house. And this thing just blew the hell up further and further and further. And you can see like places like Europe, Canada.
We're going back to movie theaters already.
Yeah,
dude.
People are going back to movie theaters. People are touring out in Australia. People are touring back in Europe. And it's just insane to me how America's like, we can't get it through our thick skulls and just like stay home, wear a mask, It just blows my mind.
Well, I had that thought a few months ago when all the protests were going on due to George Floyd's death. And like with Salt Lake especially, I was surprised to see Salt Lake join the whole protest. But watching that coverage, it was kind of fun to see who was wearing masks and who wasn't. And a lot of them were. But those who weren't, I was like, I mean, you could protect your identity by wearing the mask.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna vandalize, like do yourself a favor and do us a favor.
Yeah.
But the thought occurred to me, like only in America do we have these huge protests during like a pandemic.
Well, that's the thing, though, is that was the only time it was able to happen. People were fed up finally. They finally could do something about it because nobody had jobs anymore,
Yep.
This whole entire pandemic wiped out the whole job market. All these people who were already frustrated and angry, they actually had the time to go out and say or do something about it, And that's the thing that with America specifically is that we have like this sort of workaholic mentality. I remember going to Vegas and meeting with a couple of people from England, UK, and they said that over in England, it's mandatory that they have to give you a full month off with pay, like at least a full month. And you can spread that out however you like throughout the year. They have to give you at least that full month. In America, it's not even a mandatory 2 weeks. Jobs can be like, you have to show up, And it blows my mind because that's just like it's just sort of like this. I feel like it's like this way to control people from like getting out and saying anything because you keep them on the edge of teetering on the edge of, oh, I can't pay my bills, so I can't go out and protest, Like if I don't go to work today, then I can't live. And as soon as all that stopped, you could really see that the frustration was just too much, and people sort of snapped, and that's why all the protests happened. To be honest, everybody's just too tired of having to go crazy,
Yeah, and it's just crazy. And on top of that, after the protest, now we have all these natural disasters sweeping our whole west side and the east, or not east, sort of the east, southeast, I should say, with Louisiana and Texas with all
these natural disasters going crazy. 2020 is really, really throwing a loop through everybody,
dude. And like
especially, it's so crazy because for me, back in March, I experienced my first earthquake ever.
Yeah. I've
never felt an earthquake. And I always thought that like Utah, like was one of the places that it would never happen in my lifetime. And just out of nowhere. And it scared the living hell out of me. And I was like, what the hell is going on in 2020? As soon as the ground started shaking, I was like, the world's fucking ending. This is it. Pandemic, earthquakes. And then just like this last week, we had basically a hurricane show up through Utah. And it was insane. I was like, what the hell is going on? And then all of a sudden now the whole entire West Coast is burning down. There's a whole bunch of just tropical storms hitting down on the Gulf Coast. And I'm like, God, 2020 is throwing us through a loop, man. We gotta start doing something about this.
Just wait. I'm telling you, I've told this joke on the podcast before, but on December 31st at 12:59, or no, at like 11:59 p.m., right as that last second hits 59, it's going to turn to December 32nd.
Yeah,
there is no 2021.
There's no stop. 2021 is not happening. We're going.
Yeah, 2020 is not 2020 vision, to say the least.
No, man. I thought this year was going to be so great because all the holidays were on weekends and stuff like that. This summer was going to be so awesome. I was going to go out and do so much cool stuff. Got to stay inside now. It's insane. It's been an absolute ride, man.
Man, and I love Halloween, and I just
exactly Halloween too.
I can't condone people going out, even though you'll be wearing masks. Hopefully,
exactly. Yeah, I can't condone it either. And you know, there's going to be parties, and that's another big problem too. Is that it's the cold weather, and that's when the coronavirus spreads the worst during cold weather. And there's going to be all these parties and everything. So I feel like this winter it's just going to hit hard. 2021 is. That's why I said another reason the industry is pretty much failing. We're not going to come back in 2021. I can guarantee it.
When do you think we'll see live shows? I know we're not scientists at all, but it's kind of fun to speculate just as outsiders.
I saw somebody estimate that 2025 is the time when things will start to get back to normal.
2025?
Yeah, 2025. I think so. I think that's at least for America, anyways. I think that's a realistic time frame too, because I don't know the level of like size that the whole event industry was.
Yeah,
it just can't get that big again ever because there's not enough money. We've lost so much money in this last year just from not having shows in general that we can't pay for next year's. And in order to pay for 2022, we have to have those shows for 2021. And in order to have those shows for 2021, we have to have the shows in 2020, but we don't have any shows in 2020. All our shows this year pay for next year's shows. And the only way that it's possible to have a bigger show like that is to have that income from last year, right? I'm just repeating myself at this point, but logistically, we have to start again at smaller shows. And in order to get to those big, huge shows that we've been having beforehand, we have to just build our way up to it.
Yeah.
You can't just, that was a gap year, and congrats, here's 2022, here's all these crazy shows now. I mean, it's not possible logistically, especially with all that's been going on, all these companies needing to pay either their employees or all these companies going out of business and whatnot.
Yeah.
It needs to progress and build, and I think that in the next 5 years, that's when it's going to start to show up again.
I can see it. I had this theory that independent film is going to be the moneymaker for Hollywood going forward.
Yeah. Absolutely, because
especially now we have these studios pushing for theater releases and then pushing back. I'm like, you're wasting fucking money. Just delay it. But I like the smaller theaters, especially like the Broadway or the Tower Theater in Salt Lake. Like, I hope those don't go under. I hope.
The thing is with I know the Broadway is ran basically off of arts funds from the government and donations as well. So I don't think that'll go under at all, which I think is really nice because that's like the only place I can go to see indie films. And like that was the only place I could go to see 8th Grade. I remember when that came out. That was the only place I could go to see it.
It's a good movie.
And if I have like a film that I have my eye on and it's not like a wide release, I know it's always going to be playing on the Broadway. So I hope that doesn't go under.
Yeah, one and the Tower is great for like cult films. Like Mandy. I saw that when that got released, and that
I still haven't seen Mandy. I want to see it so bad.
Dude, Mandy's metal as fuck.
I know, that's exactly what I hear.
But also Nicolas Cage is a Color from Out of Space, the one that came out earlier this year.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
I saw that one too at the Tower, and dude, if you want a double feature, check those two out.
Check those two out.
Yeah, it's just a Nick Cage thon.
I love Nick Cage. He's crazy. He's insane. He has some of the worst movies, some of the best movies too.
Do you watch Community?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that episode where you're trying to figure out, is Nicolas Cage a bad actor or is he a good actor?
I'm a sexy cat. Yeah, they got me thinking. Why I'm like,
Yeah,
is he
it's
good or is he
insane.
bad?
But that's the thing, though, is like lately the roles that he's been taking, I absolutely love him in because it's just balls to the wall, just crazy stuff. And I love that about him is that he just literally accepts any role for no reason at all.
Yeah, I saw a interview with him. He was doing like a thing for, I think it was Primal, that new one on Hulu. He that the interviewer was like, so do you ever think that you kind of step over the boundary, like step over the line? And Nicolas Cage's response said, you show me where the line is and I'll let you know if I step over it. Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, I love it. He's been great.
So since you're kind of out of work, like musically, like the industry's kind of taken a huge fall, as we've discussed. Do you have fears of that? Like, does that kind of make you second guess pursuing being a DJ and doing electronic music, or are you still going to push through with it?
Not really. I'm going to push through with it because I wouldn't really call it success that I've had when it comes down to this. I know that I've been recognized by big names, and that's to a lot of people's success. But to me, that's not success. I won't be successful until I make it my career.
Yep. Until
I don't have any other job but just sitting at my home and on my computer making music. But to me, that's why I don't really have any doubts of just like saying I want to pursue this, because I feel like even with the event industry having to take that 5-year gap before it gets big again, I feel like that just gives me more time to go with it. I'm not dumb, and I know I'm realistic in my thoughts that it might not end up being that way, but I'm going to pursue it anyways just because I love to do it. I will always be putting out music, even if I don't end up getting famous from it, just because it's something that I love to do.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I want to make in my career anyways, because it's something that I enjoy.
Yeah. When I was talking to Albert, he had that same philosophy. It's just like, keep doing it and support others.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, I fall into that same category. I just, like I said, trying to be realistic about it. It's like a 1 in a million chance, but I don't really care about the 1 in a million chance, and I'm not really going for that. I'm just keep doing it until I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. How do you hope you can inspire others then?
I don't know. For me, it's sort of like inspiration just comes out of the blue too, and I hope that when somebody listens to my track or when somebody listens to one of my songs, they're like, I get that. I understand that, because that's for me, the music I connected with the most is the stuff that really inspires me, is the stuff that I feel connected to, or I have a strong feeling with, or I have a strong emotion with. And that's what I try to convey in my music, so that hopefully one day that can inspire somebody else.
I like that. Well, let's start wrapping this up.
All right. Yeah.
We've been going for a good hour and a half.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. And we both have to work early from the sounds of it.
Actually, I don't have to work tomorrow. I have 4-day weeks. It's great. My new job. That's like the only thing I like really, really ridiculously love about my new job is 4-day work weeks, because before at my previous job, it was just like, it was very on and off. Some days you get like 3 weeks where you have no day off. And with this job, it's always like, oh, you always have those 4 days. That's it. You go home. Like, awesome.
It'd be fun. I'm taking half a day tomorrow. I actually have to use vacation, unfortunately. I say that unfortunately, but like, where am I going to go? My couch.
Yeah.
So I'm taking half a day off tomorrow. But all right, sir. What's one piece of advice that stuck with you throughout the years, and how do you apply it?
Okay. Piece of advice. I'm going to quote Elvis Presley really badly here. He
Hold you accountable.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, hold me accountable, but it's a really bad quote. But I'm pretty sure that the quote he said was, "Do something you'll remember," something like that, right?
Yeah.
Do something worth remembering. That's what it is. Do something worth remembering. Always try to live your life by that motto. Always try to do something that's worth the memory. You know, you don't want to be stuck at a job that's not worth the memory. You don't want to be just running around doing anything that's not worth the memory. You know, so always do something that's worth going back and be like, I remember that. That was great. You know,
man, that's a good quote, especially because the older we get, the more we reflect on stuff. Me at least, I think I've more reflective. Could be because of the pandemic, but I feel like, you know, if you're like age 50, if we get through this coronavirus bullshit, we're gonna reflect on this time period, but we're gonna remember exactly what we were doing, you know, and what you're doing right now is you're still pursuing that which you desire. Mm-hmm. Fuck yeah, dude. You're like, yeah, that's before I was big. That's before I met my career.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just try to remember as best you can. Do all the steps you can to try and get to that end point where you can look back and be like, it was all worth it.
Okay. Oh, one more question. This is kind of totally off topic, but do you think, being millennials, that we're going to still boomer language in the sense of when I was your age?
I don't think it's going to be in that context where it's going to be more degrading.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be more in the context where, like, look how far we've come.
Understanding.
I feel like, at least for me, millennials are a lot more sympathetic and a lot more understanding when it comes to that kind of thing. I don't mean to throw shade at boomers, but I don't know. To me, I guess if I were to ever work in a service industry, the people who would be like the rudest to me were always the older people. Yeah. And that would always be the younger people who were always like, it's okay, just take your time, you know? And like they're more understanding, more sympathetic because they have to put up with bullshit like that all the time, you know?
Yeah, dude, I'm excited for the younger generation below millennials.
Oh, yeah, Gen Z.
Dude,
the Gen Z people have always been like, I don't know, they're always like the nicest people to me.
No, seriously. And like,
they seem like great people with like their heads on straight, you know, and I'm excited to see what their future holds for them too.
Yeah, I am. I like thinking about the past and the future and present. It's kind of fun. Depressingly enough. But all right. Jonny, where can people find you? We'll plugs in.
Okay, well, find me Twitter, Instagram, SoundCloud, Facebook, all Galixi Music. That's Galixi, Galixi. Galixi Music. Just on Instagram, on Twitter, Facebook.com/Galixi Music, SoundCloud.com/Galixi Music, or go to GalaxiMusic.com and look up all my socials, and look me up on Spotify. Yeah.
Dude, you're everywhere.
Yeah, I'm everywhere.
Yeah, follow Jonny, follow Galixi Music. I'm excited to see what you come up with during this time.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on.
Of course.
You're actually my first guest I've actually never had any interaction with.
Yeah, I only know you through Albert and Lorenzo, so it's just like.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot you know Lorenzo. Shit.
Yeah. We grew up in Tooele together. He went to Tooele High School, and I went to Stansbury. But we never really like met until after high school. We were going to Rays. That's when we met.
I love Lorenzo, dude. He's such a guy. I need to get him on the podcast.
He's a great guy. Yeah. Get him on the podcast.
I know.
He's been doing crazy. I remember because I went to go see Hereditary in theaters because I knew that he was in it.
Yeah.
And then I remember like looking and just like sitting there and out of nowhere, I'm like, oh my God, it's Lorenzo.
Dude, I love it. There's also, I know some people in there who were in that naked scene too, and I'm just like,
yeah, I know. I knew people, a lot of people in the party scene. There was like 3 or 4 people that I could like pick out, but yeah, it was crazy that whole entire thing was like filmed in Park City. I was actually up there today driving on Kearns Boulevard, and I was like, that's from Hereditary.
I love it. There's also a spot like out in Kearns. It was like it's a street sign that I like specifically remember. That's exclusive to Kearns, you know?
Yeah.
Dude, people in Utah or people in the film industry need to come to Utah. And I'm sorry we have such a shitty tax incentive.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad tax incentive, but we do have a really nice studio up in Park City that does like film shoots and audio work and stuff.
Yeah,
I know that a lot of people from the stage and theater union all worked up there too.
Yeah, I want to take a tour up there if they allow it. I want to go to. I was actually this summer. This is another tangent. Hold on. This summer I was planning on going to studio tours like in LA and out in California, but had to be put on hold. So
yeah,
that's still
everything got put on hold. I was planning on maybe going to Disneyland this summer, but that got to be put on hold too. Sucks.
Oof. It's not going to be the same, dude. Oof.
They're not the same.
So, all right. Well, thank you for coming on. Yeah, dude. Happy Thursday. And
Thanks, man.
I look forward to seeing what you do next. So,
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.